Right, first of all, Maslow. Maslow was really the first person who wrote about motivation. And he said that individuals are motivated by a number of different things. And he puts them into this triangle shape. And the reason he puts them into this triangle shape is because the reasons that are down at the bottom, there are a lot of them, but they don't actually motivate us that much. The reasons that are there at the top, there are very few of them. But the ones that are there motivate us a great deal. So what Maslow is talking about is he's talking about you need to have a range of different things that motivate different people. And the ones at the bottom, I'm not saying don't motivate people, but they don't actually do very much. It's the ones at the top that motivate people a lot. Okay then, so the idea is that we have to have the ones at the bottom before we can have the ones at the top. So let's work our way up. To start with, we have what Maslow calls basic physiological needs. Everybody has a need for food and for water. If the worst came to the worst, you would say to somebody, if I do some work, you don't need to pay me, but you need to feed me. Keep me alive for a little while longer. Now, that is the most basic need that Maslow identifies. How does work satisfy that need? Well, obviously what work does is it gives you some kind of pay, and that will allow you to go shopping to buy these things. Now, let's be honest, that really doesn't motivate people that much. We sort of take it for granted. But without that, without having enough salary to actually be able to buy food, water, then everything else that Maslow talks about is a waste of time. You won't care about it because you won't be able to keep alive for another day. So, next rung up in the ladder, Maslow talks about safety and security. What he's talking about there is he's talking about shelter. What he means by that is everybody needs somewhere to live. How does work provide that? Well, it gives you enough pay so that you can pay the rent bill, or that you can pay the mortgage, so you can own some property, or you can pay somebody to stay somewhere. In very, very low-paying jobs, then what you might get given is you might actually be given that for nothing. When I was younger, I did some volunteer work, and so obviously because it's volunteer work, you don't actually get any money at all. You don't get paid anything. Now, I wouldn't have done that if there was no pay whatsoever. What they did instead was they said, you don't get paid anything, but on the other hand, we will give you somewhere to sleep and we will feed you. So they took care of Maslow's two bottom needs there, the basic and the safety needs, and then the reason I had volunteered was to meet some of the top three needs. But I wouldn't have bothered with those if I hadn't been able to live. So, in a company, usually we're going to pay people enough to satisfy those bottom two, but in exceptional circumstances, maybe we give people food, or at least subsidise it. Maybe we give people accommodation, or again, at least give it to them for cheaply. So, we've got the two basic ones. Social needs. People have a need for social contact. One of the problems that has become apparent with the rise of people working at home is that they lose all of those social needs. If somebody's sitting at home in front of a computer all day, then some people don't really like that. They like to be at work because of the social interaction that is there. One of the things that companies need to provide is they need to provide that way that you can talk to other people. Now, obviously, basic things like the way that the office is designed. You may have seen clips on the TV or in films, or maybe even where you work, where workers are basically divided up into little cubicles, so they can't see anybody else. The idea behind that is obviously to try and encourage them to concentrate on their work, but sometimes that might actually have a negative impact, because instead they will miss the interaction of just being able to look up and see somebody, if not talk to them. Open plan offices, where there are no walls at all, are sort of the opposite. There is a lot of social interaction going on, maybe too much. Somewhere between the two might be a decent balance. So the organisation has to provide something for your social needs. So for you to be able to get some kind of social contact. If nothing else, you need to have something as basic as a kitchen, or something as basic as somewhere to go and get a cup of coffee that you can stand next to and chat to somebody. Otherwise, people won't enjoy what they are doing. They need somewhere where they can talk to other people. So providing for social needs. So that could be the layout of the offices. Again, that one, if there's lots of social contact but we don't get paid enough, then we're not going to care about it. It's not going to motivate us. It only works if the previous two were there. Moving our way up, ego and esteem needs. What Maslow is talking about here is he's talking about the need for recognition. He's talking about the fact that people like to have their work recognised. In other words, if I do a good job, I want somebody to pay attention to it and to thank me for doing it. Any of you have been in a situation where you've worked hard, you've done something, and it appears to have had no effect. Nobody said you did a good job, they've just taken it for granted. Well, now how demoralising, demotivating that can be. So what we're looking at there is ways in which the organisation can actually praise people. That's the key thing there. It could be that we leave that down to individual managers and we hope that they will praise people. But what we might want to do instead is have an organisation-wide scheme where we praise people. Employee of the month schemes, things like that. So we can actually have a formal way that we can recognise the people who've done a good job. Yet again, please remember that there is no point in having an employee of the month scheme if people can't afford to pay for their food bills. So these only work, the top ones only work if the bottom ones are already in place. The final one we've got, self-actualisation and self-fulfilment needs, are the fact that human beings have a need to push themselves. They want to try and achieve more, and that would be met by things like promotions. So having some kind of career path within an organisation so that people who are good at their jobs are recognised, that's the ego bit, and then are promoted or given more interesting work to do so that they can then go on and develop extra skills. Now that one, you can see being at the very top, is the one that motivates people the most. But again, it relies on the other four being all there. Now, Maslow was not actually talking about the workplace. He was actually talking about anybody doing anything. But the workplace, and the way that this is going to be tested in paper F1, the workplace is the bit that we are particularly interested in. So how can a company try and make sure that all five of those needs are met? Now, when I've done this with groups in the past, I have talked to them about something that I've probably already mentioned with you. I've talked about the fact that I go running. And so I have run in a couple of marathons. And so when I've spoken to my students about this, I say to them, getting motivated to run a marathon is hard work. Getting motivated to get out of bed when it's cold outside and go and run through the snow on Christmas Day when there is nobody else around and go and run 20 miles, which I have done, is very hard going. It'd be much easier to sit on the couch in front of the television and just do nothing. So why do I do it? And the reason is because I'm trying to push myself to try and do something that is hard to do. The whole point is it's difficult, so that if you do it, you get a great sense of accomplishment. I did ask one of my groups a while ago, I said, why do I run a marathon? And they very, very kindly said, in order to win. I don't think I've ever been anywhere near winning. In fact, I don't think I've ever even finished in the top half. My goal one of these days is to come in the top 10,000. I've never managed that yet. So it's not to do with winning anything, it's simply to see if I can do it and then see if I can do it better. That is very, very motivating. Now, that's what organisations are striving for. They're trying to motivate people. So Maslow is a very, very useful. It's a very, very useful model to try and use in the exam, because obviously what's going to happen is that the examiner will say, here is an example of something. What kind of need is being met? Now, the only trouble with Maslow is that Maslow treats everybody the same. He says everybody is motivated by exactly the same things in exactly the same order. And you and I both know that that's not necessarily true. There are some people who are motivated more by some things and some people who are motivated more by other things. So again, what the examiner might do is the examiner might give you some clues as to what somebody is like. So it could be that they are ambitious, in which case they want promotion. On the other hand, it could be that they want lots of money, because if they want lots of money, that allows them, for example, to buy a big house, and that buying a big house, that meets their self-actualisation needs. They feel they are successful because they earn a lot of money. They're both meeting their self-actualisation needs. They're both meeting the one at the top, but in very different ways. So just pay attention. So just pay attention to what the examiner actually says.